Hi, my name's Abby, and I will be presenting on the Nurses' Health Study. So, it is a population-based cohort study, and the investigators included Harvard Medical School, Brigham and Women's Hospital, and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. The original cohort started in 1976 and included follow-up questionnaires every 2 years and is still ongoing. And they originally looked at oral contraceptive use, but expanded later to look at different chronic diseases and risk factors. The Nurses' Health Study is the largest prospective investigation on risk factors for major chronic diseases in women. And Dr. Cook also mentioned this in class, but one of the successes of the Nurses' Health Study was that they were able to follow up regularly with participants and at repeated assessments of health and lifestyle factors, and that was instrumental in their role of shaping public health recommendations in the future. So the original cohort study, again, was conducted in 1976, and they looked at married registered nurses between the age of 30 and 55 in 11 of the most populated states. So Florida is on there, where a lot of you guys are, and I'm from Cincinnati, and Ohio's also one of the states. So why did they use nurses? They used nurses because of their educational background and their knowledge about health subjects, and they were able to provide high accuracy to brief, technically worded surveys. They were able to understand the medical jargon as nurses, and they were easily followed because of how the data was collected, but also maybe because of their background as a nurse, they were more health conscious and motivated to participate in the long-term study. And then they chose married women because of the sensitive nature of oral contraceptives in the 70s. So data collection was through the nurses' boards in those 11 states, and they received their names and addresses, and then permission from the American Nurses Association to be able to send questionnaires. So they sent out 238,000 questionnaires to nurses in June of 1976, and the remainder, or they sent out a reminder survey to non-respondents in December of that year. So 120, almost 22 surveys were returned completed for the Nurses' Health Study, and they had a response rate of 71%. Again, they sent follow-up questionnaires every 2 years, and they added, in 1980, they added the food frequency questionnaire, and that was sent out every other follow-up period, every 4 years. And then in 1992, they added the quality of life supplement that was sent with questionnaires. And again, one of the key successes of the Nurse Health Study was the response rate. They received almost a 90% response rate for follow-up cycles. So along with questionnaires, they also had nurses send in biological samples. They had them send in toenail clippings to look at minerals in the soil, blood samples to look at hormone and genetic markers, urine samples to determine biomarkers and disease risk, and then cheek swabs to collect DNA. So here are the differences between the Nurses' Health Study 1, 2, and 3. So the Nurses' Health Study 2 was conducted in 1989, and they looked at a younger generation, 25 through 48 years of age, and they corresponded with the age of the previous Nurses' Health Study. So the nurses from the cohort 1 were now about 49, 50 years old or older, and so they wanted to look at this next younger generation. And one of the things that they looked at was contraceptive use during early adolescence, because there was case control studies that suggested risk for breast cancer. So they wanted to look at that further, and they had them give detailed information of the type of oral contraceptives that they used, and how they also studied how premenopausal hormone levels influence disease risk. And there was a total of 116,000 women who remained in the second cohort. Along with contraceptive use, they looked at smoking, hormone use, pregnancy history, and menopausal status. And again, they had an 85 to 90% response rate, which is pretty great. So the Nurses' Health Study 3 was started in 2010, and it's entirely web-based. They also wanted to look at a more diverse group, so they added LPNs, which is like right under a nurse or an RM. They also included males, Canadians, they tried to include those from more diverse ethnic backgrounds. And this study also looked at younger ages and a larger span of ages from 19 to 46 years old. The cohort 3 looked at dietary patterns, lifestyle, environment, and then nursing occupations that impacted both women and men. So we see they kind of went a little bit away from the origin of oral contraceptives and looked at other risk factors that could also cause disease. And they wanted to look at how adolescent diet affected breast cancer risk. So the Nurses' Health Study 3 is still going on today. So a plug for the Nurses' Health Study. If you are a nurse or you know someone who fits the criteria of this study and wants to join, you can go to nhs3.org, and that is where they do their web-based questionnaires. So you could be a part of groundbreaking research. So I wanted to put in what the questionnaires looked like, and here this is from the 1998 Food Frequency Questionnaire, and they looked at dietary habits of high school in these couple of questions, but here were the two different types of questions. So they had kind of like the Scantron fill in the blank, but at this point, this is the second cohort study, and by 1998, individuals are like 35 or older that they're sending these questionnaires to, and they're asking them to look and remember back to high school age what they ate, on a regular basis. And so, and then the other types of questions were just like yes or no, and sometimes questions. And then down here they had if yes, then they wanted you to elaborate more on what you were responding yes to. If you go to the nurseshealthstudy.org and go to the participants tab and then down to questionnaires, you can see the entire archive of the questionnaires from 1976 on up, and look at all of the questions that they gave, and they look pretty similar to this each year until the electronic versions. I wasn't able to look at those, but again, this is pretty advanced for the time. So the key findings of the Nurses' Health Study, here some of them I just highlighted, but so if you remember, oral contraceptives was what they originally looked at, and they saw that current use of Oral contraceptives increased risk for breast cancer, but past use did not have an association. And that oral contraceptives actually reduced your risk for colon cancer. As they looked at the postmenopausal hormone therapy, they saw that estrogen plus progestin hormone therapies were increasing your risk for breast cancer more than just the estrogen only. It took longer for that to increase your risk. And then among those who are recently menopausal women, they had a reduced risk for coronary artery disease. So for obesity, one that really stood out to me was, and if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, that it reduces your risk for hip fractures because of extra padding around your hips. And moderate alcohol intake reduces risk for cognitive impairment. Obviously, moderation is the key word. So physical activity reduces risk across the board for disease that they found in the Nurses' Health Study. And then one of that they started looking at in 2010 was the occupational hazards. So they saw that nurses that had increased years of rotating on night shift had greater risk for hip fractures. And then down here, they looked a lot at dietary, also in Nurses' Health Study 3, and we see that a lot of the recommendations for dietary recommendations that we already know that we hear about, that we've heard about in the past, were found or helped, the Nurses' Health Study helped find those recommendations. So red meat isn't helpful for breast cancer. It also causes it also increases your risk for colon cancer. Healthy diets like the Mediterranean diet, fish, nuts, whole grains help reduce coronary artery disease. For cognitive function, if leafy vegetables helps reduce risk for cognitive impairment. So a lot of these findings were from the Nurses' Health Study. Research milestones that were found through the Nurses' Health Study was, first of all, it was leading in its time for evaluating the factors that it did through questionnaires. It was, to the point, but also diverse in subject, and so that was leading in its years. There was the impact of diet from the Nurses' Health Study, informed national guidelines for dietary measures. The circulating sex hormones and postmenopausal breast cancer risk led to hormone therapies. The association between vitamin D levels and lower risk for colon polyps in cancer contributed to a study that looked at vitamin D and omega-3 on that trial. And then they also discovered genetic variations, including cancer and cancer-related factors like BMI, skin pigmentation, and that helped the National Cancer Institute findings. And then a really cool part of the website shows recent news, and this one was from 2 days ago, and I looked at how H. pylori bacteria that causes stomach cancer also plays a role in colorectal cancer, and they found increased antibodies in African American men who had colorectal cancer, and so they were trying to see if there was a genetic link between the bacteria and antibodies created against that. So the Nurses' Health Study was really one-of-a-kind cohort studies that allowed so much research to be found. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And here are my references, and thanks for listening to my presentation.